Welcome to Lift Your Future, a podcast that teaches you coping skills through stories, methods, and proven techniques to improve relationships and outcomes in your personal and professional life. I'm Nicole Winkler, a licensed therapist and executive coach. On this podcast, we'll share relatable life experiences designed to help you grow. I will provide easy, practical ways to develop thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to impact your life, both personally and professionally. My goal is simple: to help you lift your future. Welcome back to Lift Your Future. Today we're going to talk about goal setting, gratitude, and the difference between coaching and therapy. Our guest will be Todd Zimmelman. He is an executive coach, and I can't wait for you to see what he has in store for you. Hi, Todd.
Hey.
I am so excited you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So I know we had kind of talked a little bit about what we wanted to talk about and touch on today, a little bit about the difference between coaching and therapy and what coaching actually is, to give some the listeners a little bit of an idea about that. And then we're going to cover a really important topic that I think is super, super important: goal setting. Right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking a lot about this, so no, I'm happy to talk about that, yeah.
Yes, and any other ideas or thoughts that you might have, I am so privileged to have you here. You are a wealth of knowledge and experience, and so where would you like to start?
Well, I hope I can live up to the hype. I think thinking back on our conversation was really, again, back to this idea of what's the difference between coaching and therapy, what led for myself to really pursue this, and just the journey of that. So, yeah, I think it's just starting with the nuance between coaching and therapy, and obviously you're a wealth of knowledge as well, so I'll lean into your expertise in addition to my awareness. And one of the fundamental differences is really this looking forward. In coaching, particularly from my practice, one of the things that I seek to always leave my clients with is some form of action plan, so that absolutely some of it's reflective. We have to understand the why, what led us to that moment, what we're talking about, some of maybe the challenges or opportunities, and I tend to use those terms interchangeably.
I love it.
Yeah.
The first episode is actually about failure being an opportunity of this podcast. So that ties right in. That's perfect.
Now I want to ask questions. And by the way, that is, what I seek to do more than anything. So even this experience is interesting because my objective is to always ask questions, talk less, ask more. So it's again, a unique opportunity to be able to just really share and reflect on the things that I have to offer, or this practice has to offer, really. Okay, I'm already going off on tangents, which I have the ability to do as well. But
I'm here to reel you in. I have guardrails for you.
Perfect, I'll take them. But yes, so it's this piece of really creating an action plan. And as a coach, I don't create that action. Again, it's through the questions. The client really gets to define and create what that action plan is. And my questions will really help ensure that it resonates with them, so that the action will come to fruition. And it is about, I think we talked about this. I use a good model is what it's called. Did we talk about this? Yeah. And
Can you explain to our listeners what that means though?
Yeah. It's the proven process, something I learned through my coaching experience of receiving training and certification. It's always this, and even as I'm listening to clients, I'm in my mind thinking of the question to ask, so that first of all, do we both understand, is it very clear, the goal, the desired outcome? And that's the G in the good model. And then, it's the question behind the question, which is another great book, QBQ, question behind the question, and being very clear. And okay, so tell me why this goal, what's the importance of this, the significance of it for you in your life.
Yes.
And then what are the options, which is the first O in that, of so let's explore how we might do that. And again, I seek to ask questions so that there's clarity around what those options are as far as achieving. And then it's the obstacles, which is the second O in that, and the good model. And what are all of the things that might get in the way? A good Stoic philosopher would say it's, we need to have gratitude, and let's also be prepared in case something doesn't go the way that we intend or hope for it to go.
Which is inevitable. That's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And then the last piece of that is the do, which is the action piece. So that as we've been able to talk through and really get clear about, what do I want? How might I do it? What might get in the way of it? Now, what's the action? And generally by that point, there is already clarity around what they might do. And so I would offer that's a very clear process and maybe one of the differentiators between a therapist and a coach.
Yes, and from a therapy or a therapeutic standpoint, I can say we normally would have treatment plans. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And what, client lacks healthy boundaries would be the problem statement. And then we go into what are the objectives to treat that problem, and what homework assignments correlate with that, and when are those due. And so it's a very different kind of process from coaching. And I'm glad that we both could kind of explain that, because I get asked that a lot. Okay, so you were a therapist and now you're a coach, isn't that the same thing? Like, well, there's some similar principles, the active listening and the open questions and being present and holding space and support. But aside from that, there are definitely differences.
Yeah, you touch on some important components and aspects, even just hearing you say it, as a coach, I said a few moments ago, I'm aware of when I'm talking. Even in this moment, I'm aware of when I'm talking. And what I would offer is my voice is not the most important voice. It's the voice of the client. And, this aha moment, I think whether therapy or a therapist or coach, it's something that it's something I'm certainly listening for, or if the client is aware of. And to explain that, if it's necessary, it's my way of defining that is going from a place of knowing, so that whether it's myself or the client that I'm certain, to a place of not knowing. And then in that moment of not knowing, that's where choice exists. And then really getting to choose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's empowering.
Yeah.
So I too am much more used to listening to people speak. And before you came today, I actually had to re-record my introduction to this podcast because the first one was terrible. Because I don't like talking about myself. I don't do that very often, so it's very uncomfortable. I wanted to relate to that with you. And also for the listeners to know that being a coach, being in this space, we are typically asking questions instead of giving a lot of information or telling people what to do. It's not at all telling people what to do. Yeah.
No, obviously I have had the privilege of getting to know you, and I'm very thankful for you, which is another key component, gratitude for me. It makes me think about, even the path to again, becoming a coach, which I know is something else that we talked about. And in reflection, to keep it succinct, what I really, I think, as far as this journey, understood and appreciate from where I'm at to where I was is just how things were very conditional for myself. Dare I say, a level of judgment. And I think as I moved into my adulthood, I was not aware, but certainly sensitive to my need to seek out approval because of maybe how conditional things were for me in my childhood. And ironically, that first led me to a career in acting. And the very interesting correlation between that profession and this one is, as an actor, you are challenged to ask questions. based on a fictional character, but that's where we would start. We would always start with asking questions, and it lends itself nicely to, because again, the fictional characters are grounded in truth of really getting to the right questions. Again, that was just one of the advantages of having that background. But as far as what led me to this moment, I think that as I really helped develop and shape teams for organizations, and I evaluated where not only I was getting my energy from, what my passion, my purpose, it was by having a coach that actually presented the opportunity to ask the question, have you ever thought about becoming a coach? And my response was no. I've never thought about becoming a coach.
What?
But yeah, it seemed, yes. But once I looked into it and started to, again, pursue, well, how does someone go about really achieving, it started to make sense. It started to make a lot of sense. And now that I'm here, I can't imagine doing anything else. So, all right, I think that was.
So you've reached your calling.
Yeah, so I would label that as, it's about being in a place of service and creating value. And based on my skills and there's so many different components that I think make me well suited for it. Your language is far more succinct. I've found my calling. Yeah. So I love it.
But thank you for sharing a little bit about the path that got you there. I love learning how people got to where they were, or are now. And this doesn't mean that you won't still continue to grow and excel and add value to people's lives in many different ways. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. No, I mean, again, I'm very thankful to to be able to share, but I think I'm in my coaching sessions, I'm very open about my experience, my life, things that I have struggled with, things that I still struggle with. And I believe that's a key component to what makes this work. I'm asking for my clients to be in a space of authenticity and to be vulnerable. Yes. And if I myself am not able to do that, well, it's going to be really hard for them to do that.
I agree. 100% I agree. I don't have all the answers. I don't know some of those resources. I don't know, but I'll ask around. I'll see what I can find out for you. Maybe I don't even know myself yet. How am I supposed to help you? And I think that that's where the questions come in, because there's also this belief that a lot of the times our clients have the resources or the knowledge within themselves. They know, we need to help kind of them get there, facilitate that process of getting them there. And I love that part of it, because I don't have to have traveled that path necessarily to get you there. And that's why I think coaching is so powerful too.
Yeah, so one of the tools, and I know you're familiar, but I'll talk about it for a moment if that's okay, is this dynamic that was profound for me as I went through my coaching experience of the DDT, the dreaded drama triangle, and the empowerment dynamic. I'm not certain if you've talked about that already on one of your shows. Have you?
In the interaction, I did. That was one of the topics. I said we're definitely going to hit on that. On the drama triangle.
Yeah, okay, so you've set it up, but maybe not.
I've set it up, but I haven't done an episode on it yet. So if you want to.
Well, I'll leave it brief, because I think that there's probably time and space to really expand on that. And in all honesty, I was thinking more about the empowerment dynamic. I think what's important to understand is that both dynamics exist, and I believe in the principle of name it to tame it. So that, if I have a handout for my clients and I can share this with them, they can look at it, they're able to name it, whether it's the drama triangle or the DDT, but we can name it, and then through that process, with the awareness, we're able to really start to tame it. And in that taming, this is where we see the changes in our life. I mean, the emotional intelligence, it's, the 4 primary components. It's the self-awareness. So now I'm aware. It's the self-management, right? Again, not to...
Other awareness.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So social or others, and then the social influence, right?
Yes.
So, again, I hate to be redundant if I am, but I do think perfect. In understanding that, right, the drama triangle, again, just briefly, it proposes that at the central dynamic of that, there's the victim. And then there is a mindset and qualities that go along with that victim role. And then they are persecuted in some way, and they seek to be rescued often.
And the rescuer swoops in, fixes it for that minute, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and each of them have payoffs, right? I mean,
they absolutely do.
Yeah.
That's why we keep doing them.
That's right. That's exactly right. And oftentimes without our own sense of awareness. Yeah, for sure. But bringing this full circle, because of course, I have the ability to go off on tangents too. It's that empowerment dynamic, and it's understanding that at all times we are the creators. And we've talked about this, Viktor Frankl, right? Prime example. Here's a guy who was in, 6 concentration camps in his time during World War II, Auschwitz, of which was the last one, I believe, and understood that at all times he had choice, if not, his physical environment, but in his mind, he always had the ability to choose how he viewed the situation.
Yes. So Viktor Frankl, just a little tidbit about him. He wrote A Man's Search for Meaning, a book I highly recommend everybody listen to at some point in their life, if not once or more than once. It is free on Audible, and he is the father of existential theory of psychology. So tying it back to the therapeutic side of it, and it is very much, it doesn't matter your circumstance, it matters your belief about your circumstance and the thoughts that are in your head. That is where you are. It is not necessarily here is where you are. And he watched everyone he loved die in the concentration camps. Yeah. And I believe his life was spared because he was a medical doctor. And that's really the only reason why. Just a profound understanding of our mind, and logotherapy, I think, is what it was, right? And a therapy based on understanding your purpose and your meaning. Yes. 2 things which I deeply seek to live into and have found results in my own life, and certainly advocate that others do that for themselves as well. So so now I've gone way off in left field, and I'm not even sure where we started with that. Well, we were talking about the empowerment dynamic of the drama triangle, and how we have a choice at any given moment. We have a choice as to how we're going to choose how to show up, respond, and behave. And so thank you for bringing that back, because the wonderful thing about that dynamic, understanding that we're all creators, and I should preface here, right? I mean, whether it's the drama or the empowerment, we move between these different roles, sometimes second to second. The other 2 roles in the empowerment dynamic are the challenger, and the challenger not seeking to be right or contentious, but simply to challenge those ideas for the sake of health. Ask good questions. And the coach. Yes. Which is the other role. Yes. Right. And again, bringing this full circle in what led to this career opportunity, it's understanding that, in having this choice and being creators, that for me in my journey, one of the best ways to really live into this healthy dynamic, is even through this career, is being mindful of that in all of my interactions. And now, fortunately, I'm able to make a living doing that. And you're very good at it. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Are you okay switching gears here a little bit to goal setting? Yeah, let's do that. Because I think this is fundamentally something that is so critical to what we do and how much we actually accomplish. Like, research tells us if we write down our goals, we are more likely to achieve our goals. If we leave them up in our head, we're not as accountable. And then also a step further, if we tell other people about our goals, we're more likely to achieve our goals.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of preface it with that. I know you've done a lot of thinking about goal setting, particularly for this episode, and I appreciate that. So where would you like to start with it?
Yeah, I mean, you've already said several powerful things. The power of declaration was the first thing I'll reflect back. Right, and as part of our goals coming to fruition, this, declaring to others. In fact, if I connect the two, if I segue here, right, part of my journey, initially I wanted to be more entrepreneurial, and so I said, I'm going to start a business, and that was 3 years before I even really became a coach, and it was just this declaration of, I'm going to start a business. I didn't know what that looked like, but I knew it was something I wanted in my life, and so I started declaring it, and lo and behold, people started asking me about it. Other people are holding me accountable to it, which is a strong motivator to doing it. And now we're talking about James Clear here a little bit with his atomic habits, right? And tying it to our identity. So yes, not only for myself, the goal setting process, also for my clients, and with this being even the time of year, or any time of year really, in setting our goals, it's appropriate. But there are different sources, and I'm even in this point this year, I continue to expand and test new things to see what works, what doesn't work. And for this year, what I've really identified are a series of buckets for my life. And we talked about this, the hedonic treadmill.
Yes.
And I'll lean into your expertise on this too, but what I understand of it is, really it was in the 70s, I think it was Brickman who did the study or he proposed through his research that we have this baseline of happiness, and that we might see peaks and valleys based on like winning the lottery, for example, is one that's used as a peak, and a valley, the example he uses is like paralysis. If somebody were to become paralyzed, and yes, both of these events are life-changing.
And polarized, very polarized.
Very polarizing, yep. Over time, we return to this base level of happiness. And so I think there's probably something that could be comforting in that. And I think for myself, I tend to want to challenge those ideas in terms of, well, how would I continue to increase my happiness over time?
The baseline.
The baseline.
Yeah, so you're saying, okay, if this is my baseline, how do I make it so next year my baseline is here? And it just continues to increase.
Yeah. So, and then there was another study in 2013. I'm trying to remember the name of the gentleman, but that proposed that through simultaneous stimuli, again tying this to my buckets, by a continued focus on multiple aspects or domains within our life, that we can, over time, the proposition is increase our baseline level of happiness. So, for myself, part of that was, okay, well, let me evaluate. And traditionally, I've always, in a forum-based, shared at least 3 of my goals with my peers, asked for them to keep me accountable to those goals. I report on those goals. I set milestones for those goals, all of the things that will also help the goals be achieved through action. And so, for this year, it's really understanding family first, being a...
So is family, not to interrupt you,
Please.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Because I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, so I want to make sure our listeners also know. So when we're talking about buckets, we're talking about domains of our lives and having separate goals for each of those different domains, correct?
Thank you.
And so family is one of your buckets, one of your goals.
Yes, and so thank you. And what I would offer is it's, yes, a bucket, and I've actually segmented it into 3 separate buckets, even underneath that heading of family. I'm thinking of like how I have it mapped out, right?
Yes.
And yes, absolutely, family unit is a part of that. So what are we doing as a family unit to really focus on one another? Another component of that, our domain, is being a father, and how am I specifically working with my son to continue to foster and develop our relationship. He's 5.
Yes.
And then my wife, of course. And what are we doing, for the sake of our relationship, our friendship, our intimacy. And then, yes, clearly outlining, and of course they're a part of this. So I may have something in my mind that I'll propose, but together we're working on achieving it. And then how might we do it? For myself, I really have 2 different categories. It's this thing up here. What work am I doing on this muscle? How am I continuing?
Your brain.
My brain, yes.
Your most important.
Not my hair.
I just talked about the brain and how important the brain is, because we literally cannot do anything without our brain telling our body to do it. I can't move my arm without my brain sending messages. I can't speak without my brain sending the messages and computing retrieving the correct wording and communicating it appropriately. And so I love that you're talking about the brain. I love the brain. So, okay, back to your most important, to your muscle, using your muscle, your brain. Yes.
Yeah, no, listen, we'll digress all day long on the brain. It's fantastic. We're in the same boat. And then, of course, the body, right? I mean, the body supports our brain and vice versa. What measurement do I seek to put in place, whether it's number of workouts or for weight or body fat? Really, I have found that the easier I can quantify it, the more attainable or action-oriented I can make it. Professionally, I have a bucket for work, but I think the one that, because I have a total of 9, the one that's probably most interesting for me this year is fear. I know we talked about this, and really having a bucket or a domain that I'm focused on related to fear, and I say fear as an acknowledgement of growth. And even there's another tool, comfort zone to growth zone. In this place of comfort, which is so important, it is also an indicator that we're not in a state of growth. We're comfortable. And as soon as we leave this place of comfort, we move into this fear zone. And of course, this is a place where we're affected by other people's opinions. We experience our own self-doubt. And this is a decision point. And this is what I've really been paying attention to. Especially if I'm lacking awareness, then the target, or the temptation rather, may be to revert back into a place of comfort.
Exactly.
And so for myself, how I've been managing this is, even if there's this idea that's presented, or if I'm watching something, or if I'm reading something, and I find immediately that I'm uncomfortable by the idea, I write it down. And then I start to explore, is there value, or what is it that's making me uncomfortable? Why am I experiencing some sort of self-doubt in this? And, starting to become aware that if I move through this place of fear, that next zone is a place of learning. And in the place of learning, we take on challenges, we learn new skills. And what happens is we continue to learn and we overcome, we move into this place of growth. And in this place of growth, this is where we live into our vision, we create new visions, we have new aspirations. And then all of this becomes comfort again. Yes.
And then you expand again.
Right. And so with that awareness and with that acknowledgement, it's important for me to be mindful of, why is this making me afraid? What's the growth opportunity in this?
I love that. I love the growth opportunity. And I also talked a little bit in the introductory for the podcast about fear being, the gift of fear is protection. What am I trying to protect myself from? And assessing, is this real? Is this a real threat? Or a perceived threat? And there's a big difference between those two. If it's a real threat, yes, I do need to protect myself. I do need to be afraid. But more than likely, it is not a bear chasing me in the woods or a tiger that's going to eat me, right? Primally, our primal fear, that would have happened 2,000 years ago. That's generally not the fear that we are experiencing in today's world.
Right, and you're really touching on, so again, just incredible value. It's, that the amygdala is what I really, causes me to think of, or what occurs to me in this moment.
That little almond-shaped part of our brain really can cause some
Right, because to your point, whether it was a lion or something that may have eaten us in the past, our brain is reacting in the same way.
Yes.
And we are
abort, or freeze, or fight. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And so, and then of course the objective is to get back into that prefrontal cortex,
which is the very front of our brain. It's like behind our foreheads. It's not fully developed till you're 25 to 30. Newer research is showing us more like 30 years old. And it's your CEO of your brain. All of the processing happens there.
Yeah, right. And so I think that's the work, right? And it's so much of that, because it's going to happen. I mean, this is the way our brain is designed. And to your point, each part of the brain is there to protect us, to serve us. And so much of the danger that we face in our world now, it's not real. Mark Twain was telling this quote to somebody just today or the other day. He said, and I'm not saying this exact, but he said that I've lived a great many tragedies in my life, most of which never happened.
Yes.
And I think it's very true.
I love that. And I told my clients that have very, very active imaginations. I've told my clients, start writing a book. You're awfulizing. I use that term. Awfulizing is when it's the worst case scenario that you can think of, but you play it out to completion in your mind. And when we awfulize, we can come up with some very elaborate stories and things that happen to us. So that reminded me, I love that quote. And it did remind me of that. That would be like something I would suggest a client try to do. Get it out, like play it out, let it go. That's a novel though. That's a novel. Maybe you could write a novel. You might be a novel writer and you don't even know it.
Yeah, and so it's beautiful because the term that I will frequently use is story. We write stories.
Yeah, our narrative, our script. Yes.
And it's just so true. And so how do we start to become aware that I'm writing a story? And I was sharing with another client for him in particular, and I've experienced this as well. From time to time I still will, where I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then this thing immediately kicks in, and I'll have a difficult time falling back to sleep. And
this thing, you mean your mind?
Yes,
starts
thank
going?
you.
Okay.
Thank you, right.
I just wanted to put a word to it.
No, it's perfect, thank you. And it's this, at some point I'll start to observe, I'm writing a story. For myself, and my work with clients who maybe have a similar experience, we would talk through what action step they might be able to implement to help work through that. For myself, what I have found is I get up and I go write it out. And through, even though it's the middle of the night, I understand I could lay here for 2 hours or 3 hours and never fall back asleep. So I get up, I go write it out for myself. And then several things happen for me. I'm able to look at it and say, is this true? Fact or fiction? Right.
Yes, I do fact or fiction. Is this a fact or is this fictional? Yes.
Yeah, and so it's exactly that. And if there is something that I see, I am the creator. I get to choose. And I say that while understanding, there are the things that are within our control, and then there are the things that are outside of our control. Some of those automatic thoughts are definitely outside of our control. We can't prevent them from happening. My actions, my behavior are absolutely within my control. And so, through this evaluation, this process, I seek to understand what is within my control, and then create an action. Oftentimes, just by putting it down in front of myself, that's enough that I can go back upstairs and fall right back asleep.
And thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, what do you do when your fear is overwhelming? And we all have strategies that we implement. I'm a writer too. I like to get it out, because if I let it continue in my brain, it just cycles. And then I find that it loops.
Yes.
And I can't shut it off, even if I try to do cognitive restructuring, where I try to think about something else. And sometimes that works, but most of the time, especially in the middle of the night when it's quiet, it always happens in the middle of the night. Yes, I'm a writer, or I'm a processor, I'm a talker. So it's, yes, get it out, brain dump, get it out of my head, and then I can make sense of it and decide, okay, what do I want to give energy to?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the gratitude that you were speaking to earlier. It's our brain is kind of this dark place, and wherever we shine this flashlight is what's going to be seen. So if I want to shine the flashlight on things I'm grateful for, then I'm going to see things I'm grateful for. And if I'm mindful about that, I can really bring that into awareness. If I want to shine the flashlight onto things that I'm afraid of, then yeah, I can really get myself going. And I'm going to see a lot of things that I'm afraid of. So there's kind of that mindfulness piece too that I hear you bringing into your process.
Yeah, and so thank you, because it is part of my journey. There was a period in my life where I was extremely unhappy, and I think we've definitely talked about this. I had an anxiety attack. I was very unhappy with where I was at in life. I felt like everything was just hanging by a thread. And it's a very unsettling place to be. And I was extremely unhappy. And
scared. I think there's a level of fear there as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, so thank you, because it's easy for me to maybe not acknowledge that. It was to the point where I asked my wife to take me to the emergency room because I thought I was having a heart attack. And I did.
Panic attacks can feel like heart attacks.
Yeah.
Most people that go into the emergency room that actually have a panic attack think that they have a heart attack. That's why they're there.
I definitely did.
Yes. And so I wanted to say that you're not an outlier in that scenario either. And so if anybody listening has ever experienced that or does experience that, definitely go in, but be open-minded to the point where it absolutely could be anxiety, it could be panic.
Yes, and it was. And that was the first thing that they told me, is they hooked me up to the monitors and they said, "You're not having a heart attack." What do you mean I'm not having a heart attack? You're having a panic attack. And I never thought it was possible. And so for me, it was a wake-up call that I really needed to work on myself. And you mentioned the gratitude, which is what prompted me to mention this experience. And one of the tools that it's become religious for me is my gratitude journal. And it's something that I do every day. Every day I start my day with gratitude.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that process, how you use your gratitude journal? Just an idea?
Yeah. Yes. So I use an outline that I learned from the 5-minute journal. The 5-minute journal is a gratitude journal. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. At this point, I just use that outline and I capture it for myself in my own library. But it's simply this, and the nice thing about the 5-minute journal is it gives the science for why each of these practices. I start with there's a quote. Every day there's a quote. The Mark Twain one was one of those quotes at one point, and then it's writing down 3 things that I have gratitude for, appreciation. It's called the 5-minute journal because it's meant to only take 5 minutes for the day, 2 to 3 minutes in the morning, 2 to 3 minutes in the evening. I usually spend about 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. But it's the 3 things that I have gratitude for. And at this point, I journal a little bit more about those 3 things.
So they're not just bullet points anymore?
Not anymore.
Or kind of just short statements. You elaborate on them.
I do.
Okay.
I really do. At this point, for myself, because I get up early. I usually get up around 4:30 or 5 each day, and it's that first hour to hour and a half of my day is really working on me, because that's the quiet time.
Your 5-year-old's still sleeping.
That's it, and my wife is still sleeping. And yes, that's my work. It's the most important work that I do in the day. And so it's the 3 things that I have appreciation for. It's 3 things that I'll do today to make today great. Is the language the 5-minute journal uses, or I now say what will make my day abundant.
And I love that.
Yeah. So, and then I really think about what are the things that I'll do today to make that happen. And then it's my affirmations. And the affirmations, some of mine, what they look like is, I am love, I am peace, I am connection, I am energy, I am wisdom, I receive freely and easily, I'll just go make more. And, it's just, there are reminders for myself that I am those things, and that I have the ability to go do those things. And I find that by the time I've gone through my affirmations, I'm usually feeling pretty energized and ready to go. And then in the evening, it's really 3 things that happened today that made today great. And it's a reflection on what happened throughout the day. And that also ends up being a pretty lengthy process for me because I tend to reflect on quite a bit for the day. And then the last piece of this, which is not a part of the 5-minute journal, but since we're talking about this and something that has also become a part of my practice, is at the end of each week, I will always ask myself, why am I better off this week than previously? And it's, several things. One, it really causes me to go back and look at those reflections. But then, it also helps me to evaluate, am I doing the right things? What are the things that I need to be doing? And it's, we must have intentions. Am I also taking action on those intentions to shift my life?
Absolutely. And I hear all of this tying into your baseline happiness.
Yeah.
I want my baseline happiness to elevate, and I'm taking the steps each and every day to make that happen. And then reflecting each week about how it was a better week, how my baseline of happiness has improved, incrementally so, little by little. So drawing that full circle, coming back to that point that you made earlier.
Beautiful reflection, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to make it, it's perfect. It's exactly right.
So 9 buckets of goals for the year. And I heard family, I heard fear, I heard work.
Contribution would be another one.
Okay.
What am I donating towards, or how am I donating towards? And I think Tony Robbins has been a big inspiration for me there, just like what he's doing with feeding families, and I think he has a wonderful story. And then education is the other one. So where am I, first of all, how much am I setting aside for the year to dedicate towards education, my continuous growth and learning? And then what? Because that's the other great thing about it is I'm at the end of the year looking into next year. What am I going to choose to invest my dollars in? And where am I going to focus my growth on? Yeah.
Yes. So for our listeners, I hear values. Each of the buckets should be a value that you have in your life. I value time with I value family. How do I break that into, is that just my family of origin? Is that my immediate family, the family I've created? I hear, work. I value work, or I value learning. I value growth. And so what are your values? And when you can identify what your values are, then you can create your buckets and your goals in each of those buckets for the year.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. And of course, along the way, there's a number of questions that I'm asking myself. And I've come, at this point in my life, I've come to realize that sometimes what's maybe even more important than the answer is the question, and the capacity to be able to ask questions of myself, because even if I don't know exactly where the journey ends or what the exact answer is, so long as I'm continuing to ask the question, then I know that I'm going through this process, this refinement, and the target is to be the best version of myself, which never ends, never ends.
And I need to piggyback on that, asking yourself those questions, the hard questions, the good questions, all the questions, right? But I think also that takes a level of being honest with yourself. And when you can be honest with yourself in answering those questions, whether you like it or not, okay, I don't necessarily like this answer, but I know that that to me is like a red flag, like with an internal red flag, hey, okay, then this is an area I need to focus on, right? Or if I want to be I did do So you did a pretty good job of that, working out last year, eating healthy last year, pretty good. Well, okay, am I gonna be really honest with myself? Yeah, there was definitely room for improvement. So, okay, all right, I don't necessarily like that, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm gonna grow the most.
Yeah.
So I think when you have that kind of feeling come up like, I don't know. It's definitely worth assessing.
That is truth. And I had mentioned that, I have a forum that I lean into every year, and I share my goals with them. And that's, even part of our group, and really challenging each other, is, how are we going to, in a very detailed way, map out not just the goal, but our path to achieving the goal. And that's the accountability piece. Yes, for the self, certainly the power of declaration would tell me that as I'm declaring it, I will have people in my life who will hold me accountable to it too. And if not, why not? Why not?
And if not, who? Or why not? If not, why not? That doesn't make any sense, but if not, here we go. If not, then who and how can I find people like that?
You're touching on something I mentioned in the question, so I'll just say this because I think there's clarity in what you're saying. I find that the why questions are really looking back. So why didn't something happen? Or why did it happen this way? The what and how questions really help us to shift looking forward. What will I do? How will I do it? And so even just, by evaluating the word choice, it will, and certainly for myself as I'm working with clients, am I seeking to cause them to look back on something? Am I trying to get them to look forward and how we'll do it or what we can do? And it's the same, tying all this together, that process is very refining, so that, I can come back and do it again because I've understood, it's this idea of creating the conditions.
Yes.
Right? If I succeeded or if I failed, that again may not be the most important piece. It's the conditions that were created along the way, so that if I did succeed, then I can choose, because I understand those conditions, to repeat them again.
Yes.
If I failed, I can choose not to repeat them again. And that's, again, what we're really talking about.
That's a whole nother episode. I feel like we could do a whole nother episode on that. Would you come back?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Well, there was a long pause there. I don't know. We'll see. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, talking about coaching. You're an executive coach. I'm an executive coach. I love that we were able to talk about the difference between coaching and therapy, because there is definitely a difference. And then moving forward into goals and goal setting and how to do that differently. I love the different domains, the different compartments is kind of how I also will do it. Because I also goal set in that way. It's like, okay, I do have my work and my job. I do have my family. I do have other goals, outside goals. I have social goals and I have growth goals. And so I do compartmentalize those things as well. And so to hear you say that, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
So sorry about that.
You're okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
You need some water?
I probably do.
Well, I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that we'll be able to have this not this conversation exactly again, but another conversation soon.
No, thank you. And I'm sorry about that. Something got in my throat and I tried not to cough. So
made it worse.
I totally did. No, thank you. Thank you for this today. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to share. I think the work that you're doing and the work that I'm very privileged and fortunate enough to be able to do is it's not only incredibly rewarding, but it's wonderful to be a part of that process and see how other people are seeing a change in their life. So thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you. We could just go on with gratitude. I feel like for a long time, because yes, the work that I'm so grateful to be able to do and helping people change their lives and celebrating those successes with them. Like, yay, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
It makes it all worth it. So thank you all for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe. You can get the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Have a great day.